Hi, I'm Crystal Archambault. I'm a Canadian artist based in Calgary, Alberta, and I work primarily in mixed media and oil painting. A lot of my work is inspired by nature, atmosphere, and the balance between strength and softness that exists in the landscape around us. Recently, I've been moving further into abstraction and focusing more on creating a feeling within my painting rather than simply recreating a scene realistically. And this trip is really part of that evolution. A few days ago, I packed up my studio, loaded 14 canvases into my truck, and drove out to the Blaeberry region near Golden, BC for a 2-week self-directed artist residency. This is something I've been thinking about doing for a long time. Not necessarily the residency itself, but the idea of stepping away from a normal life long enough to fully immerse myself in painting and see what really would happen if art became the main focus of my days. So that's what this is. An experiment, a creative reset, and honestly, probably the biggest commitment I've made to my art so far. When I was younger and people asked what I wanted to be, I'd say things like a singer or an actor, or maybe even a nurse, but none of those things really stuck. The one thing that did stick was art. In high school, it was the only class I consistently got 100% in, and even though I loved it, I never really believed it could become my life. At 24, I moved from Fort St. John to Calgary and followed a much more practical path. I studied petroleum engineering technology at SAIT and eventually built a career in oil and gas recruitment and human resources. And for a long time, I thought painting would be just something I came back to later. Something creative I'd do on weekends or in spare time once life settled down a little bit. But life really never settles down, does it? I met my husband in 2004, got married, had my first son in 2008, and my second in 2010. And somewhere in all of that, painting quietly disappeared into the background. I painted occasionally in my late 20s and early 30s, but not consistently. Mostly my art supplies sat untouched. At the same time, I was trying to build a career, raise 2 boys, manage a household, and eventually went back to school for human resource management as well. I always felt like I was searching for something creatively fulfilling, but I couldn't quite figure out what that thing was supposed to be. Then 2020 happened. Like a lot of people, my world slowed down dramatically. During that time, I started organizing little online paint nights with friends where we followed along to Bob Ross tutorials together. Eventually, we started meeting in person, and somewhere in there, something shifted for me. I realized I actually loved painting. Not casually, not as a hobby that I picked up once in a while. I wanted to learn it properly. I wanted to see how far I could go with it. That realization honestly surprised me because I think for most of my life I'd been trying to fit myself into careers and versions of success that didn't fully align with who I actually was. So I started taking online classes. And then eventually I found the Milan Art Mastery Program. I convinced my husband it would be worthwhile for me to take it, and it completely changed everything for me creatively. It taught me how to draw properly, how to paint in oils, work in mixed media, understand composition, color theory, all of it. I graduated in July 2025, just under a year ago. And since then, I've been steadily building a body of work and trying to figure out what kind of artist I actually want to become. Lately, I've found myself moving further away from realism and becoming much more interested in atmosphere, abstraction, emotion, and creating a feeling within a painting rather than perfectly recreating a reference photo. That's really where this new collection, Quiet Ground, is coming from. A lot of the inspiration comes directly from this place. The fog in the mornings, the quietness, the layered mountains, the feeling of stillness out here. There's something about being in the Blaeberry that makes everything feel quieter internally too. And I think I needed that. So for this residency, I brought 14 canvases with me. Right now they're all sketched and ready to paint. The goal is to immerse myself fully in the process and see what happens when painting becomes the priority instead of something squeezed into the edges of life. Most of my normal life revolves around schedules, appointments, sports, errands, responsibilities, all of the things that come with motherhood and everyday life. So having uninterrupted creative time like this honestly feels very unusual and really special. I'll also be doing plein air studies, experimenting more, filming parts of the process, and trying to document the experience without interrupting the experience too much at the same time, which is harder than it sounds. I don't fully know what these paintings are going to become yet, and I think that uncertainty is probably part of being an artist. You start before you feel fully ready. You follow instinct you don't entirely understand yet. And you trust that if you keep showing up consistently, eventually something meaningful starts to emerge. I'm really grateful to have this opportunity and this space to create, and I'm excited to share parts of the process with you while I'm here. If you'd like to follow along with the development of Quiet Ground, you can subscribe here on YouTube. I'll also have more updates, studio moments, and finished works shared throughout Instagram and my newsletter as the collection develops. Thanks for being here, and I hope you're finding ways to make space for things that matter to you too.